energy security is a matter that impacts all of us. Day to day, it allows us to reliably meet daily demand without concern for supply disruption or price spiking. It ensures that families can heat their homes, schools and hospitals can continue to serve the community, and drivers can stay on the road. Energy security is intertwined with everything that we do. In a state of emergency, it guarantees a resilient power source, allowing essential service operations to continue unimpeded, and upholds our national security. Indeed, energy security is national security. It should not be controversial to say that our energy security should be a high priority for the government. Yet here we are, turning our back on the North Sea oil industry, all in the name of ideologically driven targets, irrespective of global context or the will of the British public. Time and time again, it's been highlighted that the UK emits less than 1% of the world's global emissions, whilst the top three nations together emit over 50%. But rather than acknowledge this context, the Energy Secretary continues to push a deadline that is 10 years ahead of the largest emitter, 20 years preceding the third, and before the second has even set an official target. 20 years. Those 20 years could be spent on ensuring a balanced transition that doesn't push the UK into a scenario where energy demand exceeds supply capabilities. Instead, the Energy Secretary insists on maintaining our weak bargaining position by pursuing his relentless targets, ignoring our preparedness levels and dismissing the genuine needs and wants of the nation. From the opportunistic solar farms being sprung up at the expense of our agricultural sector and rural communities, to reaching strike prices of £90 to £95 per megawatt hour in the latest wind auction, which far exceeds the wholesale gas price at £55 per megawatt hour. The sacrifices being made, including the interests of the British people, evidently know no bounds. Now, it's not an argument of whether oil and gas will still be needed for years to come, because the Climate Change Committee and the government themselves have already acknowledged this. But instead, it's a question of where our oil and gas comes from. Believe it or not, a government should support its domestic production. A government should be against deindustrialisation, especially at a time of rising political tension and its subsequent volatility. Energy security and economic stability are two sides of the same coin. Increasing reliance on imports and blaming unstable global markets, regardless of the product, when we have the ability to produce it domestically and help stabilise the market, is not just reckless, it's madness. Not to mention the fact that offshoring our carbon emissions, such as importing from the US, does not help the planet. It simply allows the UK to portray lower emissions in national statistics, whilst facilitating the generation of 3 times higher emissions via this method of supply. We should be supporting any domestic production that reduces product cost, generates jobs, and has the potential to add billions more into our economy. It's no secret that households across the country are struggling with their energy bills. The UK currently has the highest industrial energy prices amongst developed nations and the second highest domestic electricity prices in the developed world. This stark fact is evident to anyone paying energy bills, and it's about to get worse. The off-gen cap for July to September has risen by 13%, reaching £1,862. This is £294 more than when the government came into office in July 24. I'm not sure where the Energy Secretary's promise to decrease energy bills by £300 has gone, but it looks like he actually meant an increase. There is nothing complicated about these figures. The cost of energy is rising, and both households and businesses across the country are feeling the impact. A recent poll found that while 60% of people across the UK support reducing emissions, 68% of these supporters believe that reducing energy bills should be the first priority. This result was echoed in another poll that found 71% of people who support reducing emissions do so on the condition that it does not increase their energy bills. But the undeniable fact is these inflexible targets are driving up energy bills. As a democratically elected entity, the government's first priority should be representing and acting in the nation's best interests, but it's the public that's being hung out to dry. Of course, it's not only the bill payers bearing the brunt, but thousands of oil and gas workers also on the chopping block. So given rising unemployment, it would be reasonable to presume that the government would abandon any policy that compounds this issue further. But of course, that's far too sensible a suggestion, so far it seems. This government appears to prefer to allow 1,000 jobs to be lost a month from the oil and gas sectors in places like Aberdeen that rely on this industry, rather than admit they're on the wrong path. I'd like to take this opportunity, if I can, Chair, to welcome the Honourable Member for Aberdeen South to his place. He emphatically won a by-election last week with almost 50% of the vote, and I think that's vindication of the fact that the public, and particularly workers in areas that are dependent on the oil and gas industry for employment, reject the government's current pace and scale of the net zero agenda. It appears the government would rather ignore warnings that their refusal to replace the energy profits levy is putting 200,000 jobs at growing risk than delay their ideology for even a few years. They'd even rather ignore the Scottish Affairs Committee's warnings that clean energy jobs are not keeping pace with oil and gas job losses, rather than give up on this net zero legacy. I've got one question for the government. What do you want to say to those thousands of workers who risk losing their jobs or who have lost their jobs so far? I know that the government will claim that clean energy is providing 100,000 jobs. But have they shared the details on the quality of those jobs and the pay cuts that the workers are having to take? This hasn't happened. And why? Because it means the government would have to take responsibility for a mess that they are compounding. And the bottom line is this. If we want to support these workers, we must support the North Sea oil and gas industry. The ban on new oil and gas licences is leaving at least 2.9 billion barrels of oil in the ground. That's billions in monetary value that could be added to our economy, thousands of jobs that could be secured, and millions of homes powered. I also predict what the rebuttal point for this will be. It will be that it doesn't matter how many barrels come from the North Sea because it's all sold on an international market and therefore will have no impact on our energy prices, which are dictated by global pricing. And whilst the party opposite loves to argue that our North Sea industry produces too little to have a significant impact on the global market, less than 1% of global carbon emissions appears significant enough to dictate our national energy strategy. So why is a 1.5% share of the global market considered too small to be worth pursuing? The answer is it doesn't serve the net zero by 2050 at any cost narrative, Chair. The fact that our energy security and North Sea industry is in a crisis is not new information. We all know it. Members across this House know it. Tony Blair knows it. Even the Energy Secretary himself knows it, just won't admit it. But it's time to put personal ambition and ideology aside. People need their bills reduced now. People need their jobs secured now. They're tired of being left to the whim of global market fluctuations when the government is not acting to stabilise the market by increasing supply and securing jobs. It's time to do what's best for our country, support the North Sea industry that provides employment, helps to regulate global pricing and protects our national energy security.
Yeah.